What's going on there, everyone? This is an interesting article from Bloomberg. It actually pointed out some things that I didn't think about Kamala Harris, but it also missed a very, very important reason to why Kamala Harris is not doing so good. Now, I haven't talked much about the presidential candidates for the Democrats, because it's so early. I've been kind of, waiting until it gets narrowed down to 3 or 4 people. I mean, we still have 10 that are on the debate stage, and there's still roughly another 10 still running. So, yeah, I'll wait. No reason to get caught up in it right now. We're still a little ways off. But back to the story from Bloomberg. Why Kamala Harris hasn't caught fire in the Democratic 2020 race. Let's get straight into it. Kamala Harris entered the presidential race with impressive credentials, a popular black woman with an inspiring story who hailed from a large Democratic state and drew accolades from her fiery questioning of President Donald Trump's nominees. It's funny they mentioned that because where I think her and Cory Booker began to go wrong before they even announced their presidencies is the way they treated a guy named Brett Kavanaugh during his confirmation hearings. Especially Cory Booker. That guy was just, I am Spartacus. This is my Spartacus moment. No, that was the moment that you showed America you're an idiot. And, yeah. But she was also the whole Democratic line was just insane during those confirmation hearings, but I digress. Yet, despite a shot of adrenaline after confronting frontrunner Joe Biden in the first debate, she has failed to catch fire with the Democrat voters, who are torn between a nostalgic fondness for Biden, why, I don't know, he did nothing, and a revolutionary desire for Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, both of which would completely and fundamentally just change America to be a lot weaker, a lot less secure, and not America the way we know it today. Harris's attempt to replicate her feat in the second debate backfired among Democrats who say she went too negative on Biden. The Californian also suffers from a perception that she lacks a deep ideological will, I think they all seem to lack that, to guide her policy ideas. In contrast to her 3 main rivals who are better defined. Not really. I mean, sure, their plans and policies that they want to enact are better defined, except for the big question of how do you expect Americans to pay for all this nonsense? But, yeah. They won't explain that part. In contrast to her 3 main rivals, and her past as a prosecutor has earned her supporters and detractors. Harris and Senator Cory Booker, Spartacus himself, really went after Vice President Biden. It rebounded to their detriment that they went after Biden so much, because it also looked like they were not just going after Biden, but they were going after the Obama legacy. Legacy? That's a strong word to use for a president's administration whose foreign policy and domestic policy was kind of trash, especially his foreign policy. I actually appreciate these Democrats calling out the Biden. Yeah, we'll go with that. The Biden administration, because it was bad. It wasn't good, especially foreign policy. They were bombing everybody. I did like their immigration stance because they were hardliners. Some would say even more strict about it than Donald Trump. Look it up. Look up the facts behind that. All those cages. All those pictures of kids in cages, that was under Obama's watch. Donald Trump actually signed a bill to stop that. But if you listen to the mainstream media, you won't ever hear that. Not at all. But yeah, but they were going to, said Randy Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers, which is neutral in the primaries. Okay. They're neutral in the primaries, yet when it comes down to it, they're not neutral. So they're not neutral ever, but yeah, we'll go with that. Weingarten said many Democrats left the June debate thinking, Kamala seems really feisty and let's look at her. But in the July debate, they were turned off by Harris and other aggressors because it looked like they were burning the house down, as opposed to building on what Democrats believe in. Aren't they all, though? Aren't they all doing that? Because there's this one sect of Democrats that seems to be being pushed aside, and that's the moderates. These Democrats now are, well, the ones that are actually going to be able to go somewhere are just pandering to the far left. All the moderate candidates, no one wants to hear about them. The media won't give them no airtime or nothing. And the one, which we'll get into a little bit later, the one candidate that was looking actually pretty good to both the left and the right, yeah, they screwed her bad. And we'll get into that in a minute. Harris's surge from about 7% to 15% in average of Democratic polls immediately after the first debate in late June, putting her in second or third place in the crowded field. But it was a sugar high. She's back at 7% she had when the summer began. For Harris, the danger is that she's another Marco Rubio. That's not something good to be compared with. Not something good to be compared with. The Florida senator, too, had a potentially history-making candidacy during the Republican nomination battle in 2016 and was hailed by the party establishment as presidential timber before he failed to translate that on the ground. Yeah, he's... Sorry, Marco Rubio. I like you sometimes, some of the things you do, but you're not that strong. You're just not a leader. Sorry. Our focus is on winning the primary, not an off-year August news cycle, which is why we've spent the summer building the grassroots Stop saying grassroots. Nothing y'all are doing is grassroots. You're taking money from whoever gives it to you, not just little people. Grassroots organizing a foundation that will propel Kamala to victory in this race. I'm glad y'all think that. Harris spokesman Ian Sams said in an email, these races are marathons, not sprints, and Kamala is a long-distance runner. I don't know. I just don't see Kamala Harris beating Warren, Sanders, or Biden. I don't see Biden lasting, honestly, because how many more gaffes is he going to have until they're not considered gaffes anymore? I understand they just want someone who could beat Trump, and they're putting all their eggs in his basket, but his mentality seems to be suffering. Too flippy-floppy. In late July, Harris backed off her previous support for replacing private insurance with national government plan and released a proposal that preserves the option for private plans, positioning herself ideologically between Sanders and Biden on one of the most contentious issues in the race. But rather than placing it in both wings, the move drew fire from all sides. The Sanders campaign accused her of going soft. Biden charged her with double talk, and voters were left wondering what she stands for. She doesn't really stand for anything. That's why she's pandering to both sides to see which side's going to be more vocal in supporting her, so she can just keep pandering to that side. It's a politician thing. That's not necessarily a Democrat thing per se. Too flippy-floppy. I just don't like her, said Debbie Fisher of Richmond, California, near Harris's hometown of Oakland, who plans to support Sanders. Suzanne Cowan of San Francisco said she soured on Harris after her change on health care. Health care is a big deal. Yeah, there was a video going around of her at an old folks home where the first thing in the video is an old lady saying, leave our health care alone, don't change our health care. And then she said, I'm not going to change your health care. The way she said it was real, nah. She was kind of being condescending. That's not my kind of candidate. Either you know what issues you support and you have the courage to stand up for them, or you don't, she said. For me, she's I'll be in favor of whatever is trending. Pandering. That's a panderer. And that doesn't cut it. Well, I'm glad some people are seeing that. Her brilliance, her passion. Patrick Collar of Roy, Washington, who recently attended a Warren rally in Seattle, said he's unsure how to define Harris's ideology. That's a problem, he said. I follow politics pretty closely, and I don't know what she's about. Either I believe in capitalism. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not going to read that. Harris has set herself apart on culturally salient issues like immigration and gun control, with far-reaching legislative proposals and executive actions to tackle two high priorities for Democratic voters. At the same time, she has downplayed ideological labels and branded herself as the 3 a.m. agenda candidate who's focused on problems that keep Americans up at night. The only people who are being kept up at night about anything political are your snowflake lefties who wake up in the middle of the night because of climate change. Sorry, the rest of us normal people, yeah, we can sleep fine. I lost my son to gun violence, said Lynette McElhaney of Oakland, adding that she was drawn to Harris's aggressive positions on gun control. And critically important, she sent her staff to stand with me when my son was killed in Los Angeles. She said she supports Harris for her mind, her brilliance, her passion, her heart. What about all of her lies and stuff like that? Can you support that also, because it all is bundled in the Harris package? McElhaney was among the Harris volunteers who lined up the halls at the Democratic National Committee summer meeting in San Francisco. They had donned Kamala Harris for the People t-shirts and campaign gear and chanted slogans for their candidate. Harris's past as a prosecutor, 7 years as San Francisco District Attorney, and 6 years as California Attorney General, is a mixed bag. Some Democrats say it's the reason she's so effective when questioning William Barr and Brett Kavanaugh, Trump's nominees for Attorney General and the Supreme Court. Others say she fought too hard to achieve and sustain convictions in dubious circumstances. Now that we're back here, something they have missed. We're almost done. I'll get to it at the very end. In some ways, Harris risked falling into the same trap that ensnared Rubio in 2016. Eloquent on the stump, adept at raising money, acceptable across the party spectrum, but not loved by enough voters. Harris is trying to run in a lane very similar to what Rubio tried to do in 2016, said Alex Conant, the communication director for Rubio's presidential campaign. They're both new faces running as next-generation candidates against candidates that in many ways represent the past. They came into the campaign with ideological credentials, but a message that would play well in the general. I disagree. It's a good strategy for coming in second, he quipped. Now, that I will agree with. If you're acceptable to everyone, you're not necessarily loved by anyone. Conant said, the key for Harris is to pick an early state to win. Rubio split his efforts about equally in the first 4 states and landed several top 3 finishes, but failed to win any of them. At some point, you need to win somewhere, Conant said. You need to be people's first choice. But back up here. Something they did not talk about, which to me seems like a main factor in why she took a kind of a hit during the second Democratic debate, that they don't refuse to mention, is the fact that Tulsi Gabbard completely destroyed her on the debate stage. Completely destroyed her. She brought up her prosecutorial past, and that was it. Kamala Harris didn't have a word to say back. She couldn't defend herself because Gabbard did her research and put it out there, right there on the debate stage for everyone to hear. And what did we see from this? What did we actually see from this? what we saw was crazy. Instead of the DNC saying, hey, we might have a nice firebrand winner right here with Tulsi Gabbard. Look at her taking on some of the top-tiered candidates. Well-researched taking on, too. But what did they do? What does the DNC do all the time? They try to silence Tulsi Gabbard. You had the big tech try to silence Tulsi Gabbard. You have the DNC not letting her come up onto the next debates, even though she's a relatively, like, one of the most researched Democratic candidates. From both debates. People wanted to know who she was. People were liking what they hear. Because she's, I hate saying it, but she's more of a centrist than a progressive. I don't like her domestic policies. To me, they are way too progressive, and that's my opinion. But you know, for a foreign policy, she got good foreign policy. She wants to keep us out of regime change wars, this, that, and the other. You know, she wants us to stop, you know, just going into places, getting our men and women killed, just because we don't like the leader of another country and we want them ousted. I'm all for stuff like that. I'm kind of anti-war. I don't think, unless we're attacked, we don't need to attack other people. You know, it kind of seems bullyish to me. But they didn't want to bring that up in the article about how Tulsi Gabbard destroyed Kamala Harris on her past records. That is what hit Kamala Harris. That's what hit her in the polls. As everyone saw how actually weak she was when Tulsi Gabbard called her out and crushed her because Kamala Harris had no real response. But yeah, when it comes to Kamala Harris, I wouldn't put your money in that bucket unless you just plan on kicking it over and watching it go away. She ain't gonna make it. I don't see any of them beating Trump. I just can't see it. Something so catastrophic would have to go on for any one of these people to beat Trump. They're all so fake. Joe Biden, he doesn't even know what he's saying. He doesn't know if he's telling the truth or lying because he can't remember anything right. That in and of itself is not something you want for one of the most powerful people in the world. You know? I don't want a president that has his mentality or the lack thereof. Sanders has come out for so much nonsense during 2016, and now he's against half of that stuff. You know, he's against even the good stuff that he was for in 2016. In 2016, he wanted strong borders, this, that, and the other, because you can't have a socialist economy and everything if you have weak, porous borders. It just can't happen because everyone will flock there to get free stuff, and there you go, the economy's dead. Plus, he wants, you know, every single one of these people want to put in some multi-trillion-dollar plan for, like, climate change and this, that, and the other. And it's like, oh, boy. Where are you going to come up with that money? Elizabeth Warren, just about the same as Bernie Sanders. She went from being pretty much being a conservative to a centrist Democrat to a progressive Democrat. Well, she doesn't even know what she is. She thinks she's an Indian, and she's whiter than me. Come on. Doesn't make any sense. And then you got old Kamala Harris. Oh, lonely Kamala Harris. Sorry about your luck, Kamala. You're just not presidential material at the moment. You never know. This just might not be your time. That's what they always like to say to people. This might not be your time. Maybe later. And maybe later with you. Once you just kind of fade out of the limelight a little bit. Because your record does stand for itself, and it's not always a good stance. But I'd love to hear your comments as always. And as always, like, share, and subscribe. I will catch you on the flip side.